Hey, hey. I hope you can all see me here on this live. So, today we are going to be talking about what to do when you're in tough times. Like, how does that work? Like, how do you see your way out of it when stuff is going on in your life that you don't like? So, it's something we all deal with, right? We all have gone through tough times. We all face challenges that sometimes we think, "Oh, I should have never had to face this. This is awful." So, yeah, what do you do when you're in those situations? So that's what I talk to you about today to try to give you some solutions for, whatever may be going on in your life that you need a solution for, or just like how to react when these situations come up. How do you react when things are not going your way, when they're going the complete opposite way? So, I have titled today's teaching, Be the Carrot, Not the Egg. So, how many of you can guess what we're going to be talking about today? My face is so shiny. I should have put some powder on. So, be the carrot, not the egg. So, this is really about how to stay soft when life gets hard, right? Finding our strength without losing heart. So, I'm so glad you're here because I know that if you clicked on this, you're probably walking through something hard right now, or maybe you just came out of something hard, or unfortunately, maybe something hard is waiting right around the corner for you. Maybe you just came from a storm and you are still catching your breath. Either way, this message is for you. This teaching is for you. And I want to talk to you today about how to deal with difficult times, right? Those moments when you feel like the heat has been turned up all the way and you're wondering, God, why am I going through this? Right? I have been there many times. And you know what? What I've learned is the way we handle the heat, the way we respond to life, when life throws us into boiling water, that determines who we become on the other side of that. So let's talk about that because that's important. We start to become, you know, how we handle things, how we react to things, who we become a lot of times is determined out of the things that we do. It becomes who we are. So you can say, well, but I believe this way, or I think this certain way, but what are your actions? Like if you say you have faith, but then you're acting out of fear, do you really have faith? Right? So let's figure that out. So the same hot water that hardens the egg softens the carrot, right? That's why I say be the carrot, not the egg. So one day I was in my kitchen and I was cutting up carrots and potatoes for dinner. And as I dropped them into boiling water, it's like I remembered something I had heard years ago. The same hot water that hardens the egg, it softens the carrot, right? It softens the potato. And then it hit me. This is the same water. This is the same temperature. It's the same pressure, but the results are totally different. So one gets harder, but the other gets softer. And I thought, isn't this like life? We all go through difficult times. Some people come out of those difficult times hardened, cold, bitter. Others come out of them softer, more compassionate, more surrendered to God. And so the difference isn't what happened. Sometimes we look at people and we go, oh, yeah, well, they're in a good mood. They're joyful because they've probably never been through something. That's not necessarily true. The difference isn't in what happened, it's in how we responded to what happened, right? So, what comes out of you when you're under pressure? Another saying I heard that I really liked is you can tell what's in a tea bag when it's put in hot water. What comes out of you when you're put in hot water? So I'm going to ask you up front, when life turns up the heat, what comes out of you? Because pressure has a way of revealing what's already inside of you. So you can say, oh, no, no, I'm normally not like this, but I was in this bad situation. Well, is that true? I don't know. You can tell what's in a tea bag when it's put in hot water. Sometimes hard situations reveal who we are. So if faith is in you, faith will come out. If resentment is in you, it bubbles up to the surface. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually God's way of showing you what he wants to heal in you, right? So you may realize, ooh, I just really reacted in a negative way. That's okay. Don't judge yourself too quickly. Sometimes God is showing you, oof, look at, I still have this nasty reaction come out of me when something bad happens. So maybe, God, can you show me how to heal that broken area in me? Thank you, Nicola. How do I heal that broken area in me? Hard times don't create your character, they expose it. Do you hear that? Hard times don't create your character, they expose it. Who you are is going to come out in hard times. Now, I've had some coaching clients over the years who've been through things that are so unimaginable, you wouldn't wish them on your worst enemy. And yet, they are kind, they are compassionate, they are sweet, they are caring, they are giving. And yet, I've met people who are angry, who are bitter, who are hardened, that life didn't go the way they wanted it to, and they take it out on those around them. But you know what James 1, 2 through 4 says? And this is a tough pill to swallow for all of us. James says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. Who wants to do that? Right? Count it all joy, like, oh, yay, I'm going through a hard time. Who wants to do that? But that's what the Bible commands us to do. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that, okay, so there's a purpose to this, knowing that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Great. Now I'm a person who perseveres. What's the point of that? Well, it says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature, lacking nothing. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait a minute. You mean have joy when I go through trials? That's going to create in me this perseverance. And perseverance, once it's finished its work in me, then I'm going to be mature. Then I'm going to be spiritually mature, mentally mature, lacking nothing. I'm going to be complete. So if I can find joy when I'm going through the trials, then I'm not going to lack anything. I'm going to have the tools. Huh? Thank you, Steph. I'm going to have the tools I need to respond in whatever situation I get thrown into. Because how many of you know bad things happen? Bad things happen to good people. And I know it sounds like a tall order to count it all joy, right? When things are falling apart, when your heart is broken, when you can't see your way out. But friend, it's not saying to be happy about your trials. We're not happy that we're going through a terrible time, but it's saying to have joy in them. Why? Because joy is not tied to, yay, good, bad stuff's happening, but joy is rooted in hope. You're not joyful over the circumstances, but you have joy because you know that God will take you through this. You have hope that things will get better. You have joy because you know God loves you. And no matter what the devil is putting in your path right now, your joy comes in knowing that God can turn around whatever the devil meant for evil and use it for good. Yeah. As he works all things together for our good. God works everything together for our good, for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. Thank you, Angela. Thank you for your gift. I know you're going through a tough time right now. Thank you, Brandon. Joy knows that this pain won't last forever. Joy knows that God is still working, even when I can't see it, even when it looks hopeless, even when there is no answers in sight. Joy is that hope that even though we don't know how, things are going to turn around from this. This isn't the end of the story. So the carrot is strong at first, right? We're strong at first, and then we get put in this trial. We get put in this hot water, and we start to break down. We're not hard anymore, right? We start to soften. We're back in the kitchen. The carrot starts off strong and firm like we do sometimes. We think nothing can faze us, and then we get put in a situation we did not expect. A loved one is going through a terminal disease. We get fired. That person that said they would love us forever breaks our heart. And then we become that limp carrot. We lose our shape. You start strong, you're confident, you're full of faith, determined you're going to stand strong. But after a while, the heat wore you down, right? Like Peter, when Jesus was going through that trial, Peter saying, "No, I would never deny you, Lord." And the trial hits, and Jesus is carted off to be whipped and executed. And before the night was over, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. The devil has a way of wearing us down. Who are you when you're in that hot water? Who are you when you're in that storm? Maybe the sickness won't go away. Maybe you've been facing chronic pain for years that doesn't feel like it's ever going to let up. Maybe your prayer didn't get answered in the way you thought it was. Maybe your relationship that you fought so hard for fell apart. Friend, if that's you, can I just remind you? Can I just remind you that you don't have to be strong all the time? 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "My grace is sufficient for you." That's what God is telling you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. What? Yeah, God's grace is sufficient for us because his power can show through us when we are at our weakest point. That means when you're weak, that's when God can show up the strongest. When you stop trying to control everything. Who raise the hands of any control freaks in the room? How many are guilty of trying to control everything? But when you stop trying to control everything, that's when God's strength starts to flow through. If you feel like you're the carrot, you've lost your firmness, your footing, maybe even your faith. This trial has been so hard for you, what you're going through, that other people cannot understand what this is doing to you. And they tell you, just buck up, just think positive. They don't know what you feel like. They don't know that you've lost your firmness, your footing, your faith. Take heart. I want you to know God is not judging you for your weaknesses. He's meeting you in it. He's meeting you in those weaknesses. And you getting to this place, you going through this trial, you being in this hot water, this place of softening, knowing that you can't stand on your own. You were never meant to stand on your own. You were never meant to be that person who's got it all together, who's got everything figured out that no one can faze. We're meant for community. We're meant for relationship with God. We're not meant to suffer in silence. We're not meant to do it on our own. I know it's hard to be vulnerable. I know it's hard to share with people what you're going through. But that's where we find solace. The devil wants to keep us isolated. He wants to keep us to ourselves. He wants you to think you are the only one going through something like this. You are the only one going through a trial. But it's not true, and you can't stand on your own. You might be in the place you need to be right now, realizing that your resilience is no longer on you and your sufficiency, right? You can acknowledge that you need God to step in and be with you. You're not trying to be this lone soldier going through life alone, like, I don't need anyone. I can handle everything on my own. I can handle every challenge. Army of one, be all you can be. How about we be all we can be together? How about we be all we can be in community with God? So when you're in hot water, thank you, Jenny. The egg is fragile at first, but it hardens and it gets hardened when it goes through these trials, right? It starts off fragile. You have to handle it carefully. You have to tiptoe around it. But then when it's put in hot water, it hardens on the inside. That happens to so many of us after we've been through pain. We've been hurt. We've been betrayed. We have been disappointed. And somewhere along the line, we say, never again. I'm not giving that person another chance. I'm not forgiving that person. I am going to protect myself. I'm going to stay behind my walls. And we stop trusting. We stop hoping because hope hurts too much when things don't work out. And we harden our hearts to protect ourselves. But when we harden our hearts to protect ourselves, we also shut out the healing God wants to bring. When we say, no one's ever going to get to me again, we think we're being strong, but we're just hardening our heart. Ezekiel 36:26 says, I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit within you. I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Oh my goodness. God doesn't want you to stay hard. He wants to soften your heart again, to restore your ability to feel, to love, to trust, to stop numbing yourself to protect you from the pain you're going through. You may think that you're protecting yourself by being hard, but all you're really doing is you're blocking a connection with God and with others. So if you've been hardened by what's happened in life, and maybe it's time you ask God, Lord, please soften my heart again. Make me tender even after what I've been through. Yes, show me discernment so I don't let in the evil people, but soften my heart so that I can let in the good and not be just so closed off to everyone. And just like the carrot or the potato is hard at first, I'm not going to trust anyone. It softens for a purpose, right? It starts off tough. Maybe that's you. You can't really use a potato in its raw form. I guess some people maybe do. But unless you've got the potato, the only time you can really use a potato raw is if you're like launching it from a potato gun. Okay. I don't know if anyone's ever used a potato gun, but they exist. But a potato, once it's boiled, once it's been through the heat, it becomes tender. It becomes ready to use. It becomes delicious, right? That's the person who lets their pain transform them instead of define them. That's the person who says, yes, what I went through was hard. It was so hard. But God used it to prepare me for something greater. Now I'm ready. Now I'm ready for what's to come. As Romans 8:28 tells us, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. And we are called according to his purpose, right? For those who love him and are called according to his purpose. It says all things. And I know when you are going through the worst thing you have ever been through in your life, you maybe can't even fathom how, like, the possibility of God somehow being able to turn this around and use it for something good. The devil may have come and set out to destroy everything you value. And God is saying, don't worry. Even though the devil meant this for evil, God meant it for good. Right? That's what Joseph said. Who remembers what happened to Joseph? He was one of 12 brothers. He was his dad's favorite. Sometimes being the favorite Put you in a bad place. He started having these dreams that one day his brothers were going to bow down to him, that he was going to be someone important. He even had, even his, he dreamt even his father and mother would bow down to him someday and that he would be someone important. God may have told us the same thing. God may have put some super big dreams in your heart. I think maybe Joseph's problem was he told people, oh, brothers, one day you're going to bow down to me. I'm going to be so important. Ooh, his brothers hated him. They wanted to destroy him. They made plans to kill him. You can't tell your dreams to everyone. You got to be discerning of who you tell your dreams to. So his jealous brothers, they were going to kill him. But his one brother didn't want him to be killed. He wanted to save him. So they sold him. They sold him into slavery. So here he is having this big dream that he's going to be a big, important person. And now he's sold. He's a slave. He's working as a slave in someone's house. And the woman of the house thinks Joseph's pretty hot. She wants to get with him. She wants to hook up with Joseph. And Joseph's like, no, there is no way I could do this to my God. I would not do this to my master, cheat on with his wife. I would never do that. This woman was so angry that Joseph wouldn't sleep with her, that she grabbed his clothes that he had on and he ran off. She ripped him off and then she screamed rape. Oh, Joseph, that servant you hired, he tried to sleep with me. Well, the master threw him in prison. His brothers threw him in a pit. Then he sold him to slavery. Now he's in prison for a crime he did not commit. Do you think he was having joy? Do you think he was rejoicing? He's probably like, God, you showed me I was going to be this big, important person, and now I'm going to rot in jail for the rest of my life? I don't know. Have any of you been through something that intense? Kind of sometimes makes what we're going through seem like nothing, right? Thank you, Jimmy. So we know God's going to turn around and work it out for good. And the dreams Joseph had, they came true. They happened. He did become the second most important person in the land. You can read about that story and how that went down. But God turned it around. And his brothers, and they had to come and they basically had to bow down to him. Thank you, Enrica. They had to beg him for food because the whole land was in a famine and they ran out of food. And Joseph was the second in command in all the kingdom, and he was in charge of who got the food. God prepared him. So then when his brothers came to apologize to him, he said, no, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. So we might not know how God is going to turn around our awful circumstance and use it for good, but we know it's possible. And that hope is what gives us joy during the heartbreak, during the setback, during the delay, during the disappointment. God can use it all, even the parts that don't make sense. Over the years, I have cried buckets of tears from disappointment, from betrayal, from loss. Even just my life not turning out to be what I envisioned it would be. Like, how many of you have ever cried because you're like, I thought my life would be different than this. I didn't think that by now I thought I would have more, be more, do more. I thought my life would look different. That's a different kind of disappointment, right? My life didn't turn out the way I believed that it would. We've all been through bad times, right? But something beautiful can come from that. We can find purpose. Sometimes we can even find a platform from our pain. right? I have a speaker friend who's an international speaker, best-selling author who's spoken all over the world. But she came from being a crackhead living out on the street for 10 years. She had been stabbed, she had been shot, she had been raped. God turned her whole life around, made her a bestseller, international speaker all over the world. Can God turn your pain around and use it for a purpose? Yes, He can. But we have to be soft for Him to do that. We have to be the carrot, not the egg. We have to soften in the heat and not get hardened like the egg. So, what if us being soft and vulnerable could also be not only the thing that helps us, but the thing that helps others, to help others see hope in their situation? Even if we feel like I don't even want to do this for me, could you be soft for others so others can find hope? So, so would it be worth exploring or even being open to the possibility that even your worst tragedy is something that God can turn around, that that He can heal those wounds so that we can help others heal of theirs. So ask yourself, am I going to make this storm, this trial, this disappointment, this bitterness, am I going to let this hot water make me hard like the egg? Or am I going to let it soften me, to tenderize me like the carrot, like the potato? Can I be used for something greater? Because you know what? Whatever you've been through, it's not wasted. God doesn't waste the fire. Sometimes we think, well, if God loved me, He wouldn't have let me go through this. But, friend, I have to tell you, even though this may be hard to hear, God's love isn't the absence of trials, it's His presence in the midst of them. The same way you have to rip and tear a muscle in the gym by lifting heavier and heavier weights till it rips and tears the muscle, it repairs stronger. We need to do that. We need to repair stronger, and then we can handle whatever comes our way. Like I say in my book, You Are Worthy. The things that used to take me out, I now eat for breakfast. Sometimes the devil attacks me, and I'm like, is that all you got? We got to let it soften us and yet make us stronger at the same time. So I want to acknowledge here that even though it's hard to think about or understand or experience, bad things happen to good people, innocent people. Bad things happen to children every day, not because God isn't there or that He isn't good, but because we live in a fallen world where the devil, God's enemy and ours, is alive and well, right? John 10:10 says, He comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Yet God comes to give us life and life more abundantly. So if what we're going through is a loss, right? The devil is stealing something from us, killing something, destroying something. We know that is the devil's work. That is not God. We've got to stop blaming God for what the devil is doing. Now, I'm sure a lot of you here today would like me to expand on why bad things happen to good people. I started to write a little section of that, and it ended up being like 5 pages long. So that's going to have to be another teaching for another time. But I do want you keep coming back, and we'll talk about that. Why good things happen to bad people, and help you understand why you or someone you love may have experienced something horrendous, unfair, or that didn't make sense. But for now, I want to stay on track and talk about what we're here to talk about, how to respond when you feel like life is boiling over. When you're in that hot pot, even then, God is getting you ready. Is showing you what's inside you. God is making you usable. Thank you, wisdom. He's preparing you for what He's already prepared for you. He's getting you ready for what He already has ready for you, but you're not ready for it yet. You're not strong enough to handle it yet. You're not soft enough to be compassionate yet. So here's what to remember. You don't get to choose what happens to you, the kind of darkness. They were both beaten as children. They were both cursed at. They were both called worthless. They were both made to live in fear of their fathers. And every night they braced themselves for the sound of footsteps in the hallway, for the signal that another round of pain was coming. They grew up trembling, flinching at every raised voice, at every sudden movement. They both knew what it felt like to be powerless, to be told, "You'll never amount to anything." They both knew what it felt like to cry themselves to sleep, wondering what they'd done to deserve this life that they had been born into. But when they became fathers themselves, their choices took them in completely opposite directions. The first man repeated the cycle. He yelled at his children, he hit them, they made mistakes, and so he justified it. He pointed out all the things that they were doing wrong. And when questioned, he pointed back to his past. When people questioned him, he shrugged and say, "You don't know what I went through. If you lived my life, you'd understand. How could I not be this way? It's the only life I ever knew." To him, pain was all he'd ever been taught, and he believed it was the only love language that he could speak. But the second man, who had lived through the same nightmare, he made a different choice. He remembered what it felt like to feel small and to be afraid, to beg silently for a kindness that never came. And he vowed that his children would never know that feeling. The first guy, he was the egg. He let that boiling he went through harden him, and he carried on that same thing. The second man, he let that boiling soften him, and he learned patience. He became gentle. He rarely raised his voice, and he raised his children with respect. When people asked him, "How come you turned out so differently?" he said quietly, "How could I not treat my kids with love and gentleness after the life I had? How could I not expose them? How could I to love and kindness that I never received? Why would I expose them to the same pain I endured?" And that's the irony. Both men explain their choices in the same way. How could I not? Both use their past to justify their present, but one let his pain define him. The other let his pain refine him, to shape him. One repeated the destruction he had known, the other rebuilt from the ruins. It was the same past, the same suffering, but different choices. Because pain may shape you, but it never gets the final say. You do. You get the final say, no matter what has happened to you. It's the same with the boiling water that I'm talking to you about today. You can't control the water, but you can control what it does to you. You can choose to be the carrot or the egg. Will you let the hot water soften you, make you kinder, more compassionate, or make you hard, make you bitter and indifferent to what others are going through? Deuteronomy 30:19 says, "I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life." Every time something hard happens to you, that choice is in front of you, and you can choose to see it through the lens of faith or through the lens of fear. You can choose to have it make you bitter or make you better. You have the choice to be transformed, and that's what we're commanded to do, right? Romans 12:2 says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That means your transformation starts in your thoughts. It doesn't start with how others treat you. It doesn't start by the tragedy that you've been through. Your transformation starts in your thoughts. You can get indifferent or you can get better in your circumstances. It's like that old poem by Frederick Langbridge, the Irish poet and clergyman. It's from his poem, A Cluster of Quiet Thoughts. And it speaks about two men in prison. Two men looked out through the same bars. One saw the mud, one saw the stars. Two men looked out through prison bars. One saw the mud, the other the stars. And life is just that way, my friend. 'Tis not the bars that make the end, for each will find what he desires, the gloom or the glow of heaven's fires. Right? That's similar to my story about the two men that were abused as children. Circumstances may be identical. Both men are in the same prison, but it's our perception that changes everything. One focuses on what's beneath him, the mud, the limitation, the despair. The other lifts his eyes to what's above him. He looks to the stars. He looks to hope. He looks to eternity. It's a poetic reminder that our outlook determines our outcome, not what happens to us. It's our outlook that determines our outcome. Both see the same reality, but what they focus on determines what they become. And that's the main message we need to live out each day. What you focus on, you will become. Where your eyes go, your body flows. Your body will follow what you're looking at, what you're focused on. If you're focused on the negative, you're going to find that everywhere you look. If you are focused on the positive, you are going to find that everywhere you look. So, what will your focus be on? Are you going to focus on the mountain in front of you stopping you? Or are you going to focus on the mountain mover? Are you going to focus on God who could obliterate that mountain? We got to trust him. We got to trust him in the hard times. We got to trust him when he says, the plans I have for you are for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. What you focus on, you will become. Your life will head in whatever direction you are focused on, even if it's the thing you absolutely don't want. I've used this example before, but when people are learning how to be a precision driver, like a precision race car driver, the teacher doesn't teach you about the obstacles in front of you because he knows what you focus on, you're going to head towards. So if the person driving this race car, if there's a pole on the right in front of them, and the driver doesn't want them to hit the pole, he won't say, no, watch out for that pole, watch out for that pole, you're going to hit. Because he knows what you talk about, what you think about, what you look at, that's what you're heading towards. So the driver trainer will say, veer to the left, veer to the left. He won't mention the pole on the right. He'll just say, veer to the left, veer to the left. It's the same as when I was in gymnastics. When I would be on the balance beam and I'd be trying to do a cartwheel or a back walkover, the trainer wouldn't say, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, be careful. He would say, stick it, land it. We have to focus on what we want, not the things that we don't want. That's why it never, ever pays to focus on our problems. We don't focus on the mountain in front of us. We focus on the mountain mover. The solver of our problems is God. When we focus on our problems instead of the problem solver, we worry. We get stressed. We tie ourselves in knots, stressed out over our circumstances that we have absolutely no control over until it makes us stressed and sick, and we spiral so far down that we're having anxiety. We're not at ease. We're in dis-ease about our situation. And that in your body can create real disease. When you allow yourself to stay in a state of dis-ease long enough, that can become disease. I've heard some people say that 75 to 90% of what people go to the doctors for Their ailments, 75 to 90% of them start right here. Why is that? Because if you believe your situation is hopeless, you'll live like it. That's why I, as a life coach, try to steer my clients towards solutions. Yes, there are times that we often have to process what's happening first, right? It's human nature to want to make sense of things, to try to figure out, well, what could we have done differently? Were we at fault in some ways? Or how could we have done better? Or why something has happened to us? But at some point, you have to shift your focus from what happened to now what? Now what? What will be my life now? Not about dwelling on what happened then. So many things don't have answers. Why wasn't I saved from this? Why didn't someone rescue me? Why couldn't they tell this was happening to me? Why was I trapped here? Why was this allowed into my life? Some of those things don't have answers. And we ask the wrong questions. What did I do to deserve this? Don't ask that question, because the devil will come in and answer exactly what you did to deserve that. He will come up with answers about you being evil, you being dirty, you not being good enough, you not deserving, you not being worthy. You got to ask yourself the right questions. Now what? Now what do I do? Now how do I move on from this? And now how can I turn my pain into purpose? Now what will my life be like? Bad stuff happens to good people every single day, because we live in a fallen world and people have free will. They have choice to hurt others. They have a choice to drink and drive. We're not robots. We're not forced to be good. Matthew 5:45 says, he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. So whatever you're facing, whatever you've been through, if you believe that God can turn this around for you, you're going to start seeing solutions and strength where others only see setbacks. That's you keeping yourself soft. That's you keeping yourself open. That's you looking for answers instead of saying, it's impossible. It's never going to get better. I'm never going to heal from this. I'm never going to recover. If that's what you believe, that's what you're going to experience in your life. But the moment you allow yourself to be open, even if just to the possibility that something good is coming, that something good is on the other side, that's when you're going to start to see little cracks of breakthrough coming in, turning your pain into purpose. Let me tell you something. Nothing you've gone through is ever wasted. Not one tear, not one prayer, not one lonely night. You know, when I'm talking about, like, who do you become in hard times? I think about Paul and Silas. I don't know if any of you have ever read this story. It's in the New Testament of the Bible. But Paul and Silas, they were beaten. They were imprisoned. They were chained. And instead of complaining, they started singing. Listen, these dudes were chained up to a wall. And let me tell you, they aren't like the modern day prisoners. Okay, modern day prisoners, they have TV. They have classes you can take. They have a library. They have free time, like an hour a day out in the yard. They had beds with mattresses, right? They have 3 meals a day now in prison. They have blankets when it's cold. They have air conditioning when it's hot. I mean, Paul and Silas didn't have any of those things. They didn't even have toilet paper. And maybe you're thinking, well, I don't know who these Paul and Silas dudes are. Maybe they deserved it. They must have done something awful to get thrown in prison and chained up. No, I'm going to tell you what the context is. This is in Acts chapter 16. Paul and Silas, they're in the city of Philippi preaching the gospel, which means they're telling people about God. They're telling people about the good news of salvation. Basically, telling people that Jesus could set them free from whatever they were going through. While they were there, they encountered this slave girl who was possessed by a demon. She was possessed by the spirit of divination. So she could tell fortunes because she was possessed by demons. And her owners made a lot of money off her doing that. So for days, see, even the demons recognize God and tremble, right? For days, this demon-possessed slave girl were following Paul and Silas around, and she was shouting things like, "These men are servants of the Most High God who proclaim the way of salvation." Now, what she said was true, but the spirit behind it wasn't from God. It was an evil spirit. So after a while, Paul discerned what was happening, and he saw this poor slave girl, that she was in bondage, that the demons were making her do all these things, and the spirits were what was speaking through her. And so, in the name of Jesus, Paul cast the demon out of her. That's why they were arrested. That act of freeing the girl from demonic bondage that she was under, it angered her owners. It made her owners mad because the demons were cast out of her. Now she could no longer tell people's fortunes. Now, here's another place I was going to go on a tangent and talk to you about for a couple minutes about. Some of you read your horoscope. Some of you have gone to fortune tellers. Some of you have had your palms read. And you may be wondering, what's the big deal about that? And I want to tell you why that's dangerous to go to these places and trust what they have to say. But when I started writing that section out to share with you guys, it ended up being 6 pages long. And I realized that's going to have to be for another live, for another teaching, for another time, so I can stay focused on what we do when we're in a hard situation, how to stay soft when we're in a hard situation. So I couldn't cover that topic today because I could do a whole teaching on that by itself. But if that's something you're curious about, drop a yes in the comments. And if I get enough yeses, I will come back and I will teach on what the dangers are of getting your fortune told, reading your horoscope, having your palm read. There's a real danger to that. It opens you up to things you don't want to be opened up to, like this slave girl getting possessed by demons because of it. So, not saying that happens to everyone who does that. So you'll have to just come back and tune in when I do teach about that, because I think that would be good for you to hear. All right, so we're not going to talk about that today, but we'll uncover the hidden dangers of that soon. So back to Paul and Silas. Since they cast out the evil spirits of the girl, the owners of his the slave owners, I should say, lost their source of income. So the owners dragged Paul and Silas into the marketplace before the magistrates and accused them of, here's what they got accused of, throwing our city in an uproar by advocating customs unlawful for us, Romans, to accept or practice. So in other words, they were getting charged with disturbing the peace and promoting an unproved religion. But the whole reason they did that was economic. Paul and Silas had disrupted the business of exploitation. They were using this girl to make a profit. So what happened next? The crowds turned against him. Without a fair trial, the magistrates had Paul and Silas stripped, beaten with rods, and thrown into prison. After they had been severely flogged, they were thrown in prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. So maybe they thought that some of their followers would come and try to free them. So they were supposed to be guarded carefully. So when he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell, like a cell within a cell in an inner cell, and he fastened their feet with stocks, big, heavy chains clamped closed, right? You couldn't walk in, you couldn't move in those big, heavy chains. I mean, they're chained to the wall and their feet are in stocks. Now imagine you're in that imagine you're in that situation. What would your response be to that? Would you be like, yay, count it all joy? This is awesome, God. Thanks. I'm out there doing your work, telling people about you, setting people free, and now I'm locked in jail because of it. Thanks, God. I mean, what would your response have been? Right? We probably wouldn't have been thrilled. Maybe you would be yelling, I'm innocent. Get my lawyer. Get me out of here. I didn't break any law. Listen, you'd have a lot to complain about. Yet Paul and Silas, they had a different response in their darkness. Instead of cursing and complaining, Paul and Silas did the unthinkable. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. Would you be doing that if you were locked up? I don't know. I'd like to think I would, but would I really? They were singing praises to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. The other prisoners were witnessing how they were reacting. Just like people are watching you. When you are put in unfair situations, people are watching how you react to it. If God is real, how do you react? Do you react in hopelessness? Or do you react in like, you know what? I trust God's going to get me out of this. So at midnight, they were praying and singing praises, and the other prisoners were listening to them. And Acts 16:25 says, in the middle of the prison, they were praising. That's when the miracle happened. A violent earthquake came and shook the prison, and all the doors flew open. And everyone's chains came loose. Everyone's. Not just Paul and Silas's chains. This is why I often tell my coaching clients when they are going through a tough time or a really intense battle or spiritual warfare, I tell them you got to blast the praise and worship music and start singing your heart out. Sometimes you don't feel like singing at first. Do it anyway. Our praise in the midst of trouble, it disarms the enemy. Thank you, Ice. It disarms the enemy. Psalm 8:2 says, the praise of the children and infants, you have established a stronghold. Through the praise of children and infants, you have established a stronghold against your enemies to silence the foe and the avenger. Meaning, God chooses something as simple as pure praise, even the praise from a child, to still, to stop, to silence, to paralyze the enemy. You want those attacks to stop? You start blasting that praise and worship music. Where worship rises, accusations lose their power. The attack from the evil one loses its power against you. Where worship rises, accusation and attacks lose their power. Matthew 21 tells us, when the children shouted, Hosanna, the Son of David, in the temple, the religious leaders were angry. Some religious leaders, some people who call themselves rabbis, pastors, prophets, whatever label you give yourself as a person of God, if you don't act the way God wants you to act, if you're not acting in love and you're hurting others or you're manipulating them, listen, manipulation is part of the spirit of witchcraft. So you may go, well, I don't get my fortune told. I don't do this or this. But if you are a control freak, if you are a manipulator, if you're trying to get people to do things the way you want it to do it and you're trying to control every situation, that is part of witchcraft. Manipulation. I know we're going to get into that in another teaching. Worship isn't weakness. It's spiritual warfare. The devil wants to tell you, oh, don't put that music on. Don't put that noise on. That's not what you need right now. You need to just cry right now. You need to just wail and be angry. Of course he's going to tell you that because he wants you to stay stuck. 2 Corinthians 20 says, when Jehoshaphat's army faced three massive enemies, God told them to put the singers out first. Can you imagine that? You are going to war against three different massive enemies. You're just one little army, and there's three massive armies coming against you. And God says, oh, yeah, don't send the guys with the big swords out first. Send out the singers. Can you imagine if you were one of those singers? Oh, wait, what? The choir has to go out first? Got all these big guys with swords. And we're going to just go out singing. But as they began to sing, the Lord sent ambushes against the men of Ammon, against Moab, against Mount Seir, and they were defeated. Your worship, your singing, your praising and thanking God, not for the trial, but for his ability to get you out of it. He's going to come in and rescue. It's going to totally disarm the enemy. That they didn't win this battle with swords, they won it by songs. Praise invited God's presence, and it's God's presence that scattered the enemy. So you may not be able to scatter the enemy, to get the enemy to leave, but you're softening, you being the carrot and softening to what God is doing, praising God in the midst of a storm when it looks impossible, like there's no way out and you're doomed, you're about to die, things are never going to be the same again. Your praise stops the enemy. God steps in. Psalm 22:3 says, but you are holy, you who inhabit the praises of Israel. Where praise lives, God's throne is established. His authority fills the atmosphere. When you're praising God, even in the midst of your terrible times, and you're thanking him, not for the trial, but that he is able to take you through it, you invite God's presence. When he is enthroned, darkness has no seat left. When you invite God in, instead of the pain, the fear, the rejection, the torment, the loneliness, the betrayal, when you're dwelling on those evil things from the devil, you're not inviting God. Faith and fear can't exist, right, in the same atmosphere. You're going to pick one or the other. Are you going to worry and have doubt? Or are you going to have faith and have hope? Faith, hope, and love, right? 1 Corinthians 13:13. Faith, hope, and love. These three remain, but the greatest of these is love. And scripture says perfect love casts out fear. If you are dwelling in God's perfect love, fear has no place in your life. Fear can't even stay. You get to the point where you're like, okay, is that all you got, devil? I'm not afraid of you. You can look at Job, right? His children were taken from him. His children were killed. He got boils all over his body. He lost his fortune. He lost everything. Even his wife said, curse God and die. He's like, no, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And he didn't let his circumstances harden his heart towards God. And that's my advice to you. You can't let the terrible times you've been through harden your heart to God or make you start complaining. Right? Their praise is what broke the chains off them, Paul and Silas, at midnight when they were singing those praises to God. The violent earthquake, the prison was shaken. It broke the chains. Praise isn't just gratitude. It's a weapon. When you're going through tough times, that is your weapon to fight back. When we worship, the enemy's accusations against you lose their volume. But guess what complaining does? Complaining invites chaos, but praise invites the presence of God. And where God is present, the devil can't dwell. So yes, praise stills the avenger. It shuts the mouth of the accuser, and it reminds us that God is above any dark power. Right? The jailer was terrified. The jailer got so scared. He's like, oh my God, the doors are all open, the chains are all. He was so scared that the prisoners had escaped and he was going to get killed and tortured from his boss. He was just about to take his own life when Paul stopped him. And Paul led him to salvation that very night. They were in chains for doing good. They were in prison for doing good. You may have circumstances in your life where you did nothing wrong and you were punished for it. The opposite, you were doing everything right that you were supposed to do and you were punished for it. punished for setting someone free. Paul thrown in prison for setting someone free of the demons that were tormenting her. Even in that unjust place, they praised God, and their praise became the key to their freedom. And sometimes doing what is right won't make you popular. It might even get you chained, but God sees. And if you can still sing in the dark, if you can still trust Him when life seems unfair, your worship can shake the very foundations of what is holding you back. Even in the circumstances that praise shook the prison so hard, the doors flew open. When you choose praise in the middle of your pain, your chains break. Thank you so much, Nira. Your prison, you break out of your prison. And not just yours. You break other people out of their prisons. You are the key to someone else getting set free. So when you choose to praise in the midst of your storm, it's not even just for you. Even in that circumstance, the praise shook the prison so hard, the doors flew open, not just for Paul and Silas, but for other people too. It's not just for you, it's for other people. It's for the other guys in jail who actually probably maybe deserve to be there. But their chains broke off as well. Your pain, when you choose to respond to it in a good way, can become someone else's hope. Your scars can become a sign to others that healing is possible. God doesn't just bring you through the hard times. He brings you through it for a reason. So let me ask you, what are you allowing in your life right now for your response? Are you allowing your difficulty to make you hard, like the egg that's put in hot water, or to soften you, like the carrot, so you can become useful? You get to decide. And maybe that's your biggest takeaway today. You can't always change your circumstances, but you can always choose your response. So when you're in hot water, just pause and ask, Lord, what are you trying to show me here? Because sometimes your greatest growth comes from your greatest grief. So before we wrap up, I want to give you 3 quick things you can start doing right now to deal with difficult times better. And number 1, check your focus. Stop replaying what went wrong and start asking, what can I learn from this? Philippians 4:8 says, to think on whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is praiseworthy. That's number 1. What are you focusing on? What are you dwelling on? So check your focus. That's number 1. Number 2, stay connected. Don't isolate. Pain loves isolation. Thank you, the boogie. Pain loves isolation, but healing happens in community. So reach out to a friend. Reach out to a pastor you can trust. Reach out to a coach. Talk to someone who can remind you of who you are in God. Number 1, check your focus. Number 2, stay connected. Number 3, keep showing up. You're here today. You showed up for this training. You could have been scrolling mindless brain rot, but here you are, learning how to make your life better, learning how to overcome your difficult times. Here you are showing up for yourself so you can also better show up for others. Keep showing up. Don't quit just because it hurts. Don't throw in the towel and try to end it because you don't see how the pain is going to get any better. Galatians 6:9 tells us, let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. What does that mean? Good things are coming. We're going to get something good to come out of it. We're going to get a harvest. We don't plant seeds. You planted seeds for your dreams. Maybe hardship came and you've been crying and crying and crying. Those tears watered the seeds you planted. And soon a harvest is going to spring up. Your breakthrough could be closer than you think. So I would love for you to just, follow along with me or say this prayer out loud or to yourself. I just want to encourage you with a prayer, because whatever hot water you're going through right now, I want you to remember God has not abandoned you. He's using you. He's going to use this season to strengthen you, to reshape you, to prepare you for what's to come next. So just pray this with me. Father, thank you for being with me in every season. God, when life gets hard, please remind me that you're still working, even when I can't see it. God, help me not to harden, but to soften. Help me not to give up, but to grow up through the process. Pray, God, please use my pain to develop my purpose, and let everything that I have been through become a story that brings hope to someone else. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.